Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of All of My Favorite People Are Dead, a history podcast. I am your host, Shannon Butler. Welcome to the crypt. Well, by crypt I mean my home office, essentially. So, on this show, I only talk about my favorite dead people, right? So, you have to be dead in order for me to tell your story. Well, it just so happens that this very famous and interesting individual has in fact just died. That's right, I'm talking about none other than Her Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II. Or QE2, as some say. Britain has just entered their period of mourning. And though I thought about holding off on a QE2 episode, you know what? Everyone won't stop talking about her, so let's just do it. Let's just get it out of the way. She's dead. We can talk about her. She's not pining. She's passed on. This monarch is no more. She has ceased to be. She's expired and gone to meet her maker. This is a late monarch. She's a stiff breath of life. She rests in peace. If you hadn't nailed her to the throne, she would be pushing up the daisies. She's run down the curtain and joined the choir invisible. This is an ex-monarch. Where my Monty Python fans at it? Holla. Anyway, got that out of my system. Her Majesty was born on April 21st, 1926, to her mother, Elizabeth, the Duchess of York, and Albert, the Duke of York. At least those were their titles when she was born. The reigning monarch at Elizabeth's birth was her paternal grandfather, King George V. Now, her full name was Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor, but the family just called her Lilibet. And pretty much right from the start, she won the hearts of not just the people of Great Britain, but also the rest of the world. Did you know that she was on the cover of Time magazine when she was just 3? Super cute. Her sister Margaret was born in 1930, and the two lived a lovely childhood at first, mostly private. She and her sister spent time between their family residences at 145 Piccadilly in London and the Royal Lodge at Windsor Castle. They were privately tutored, and Elizabeth was said to be very smart and serious, very serious girl. It's like she was born to bear a load, complete with a sense of responsibility embedded in her person. Yeah, not me. I'm 37 and my sense of responsibility is still questionable. Elizabeth never did anything naughty. Her sister Margaret kind of picked up the slack in that department, apparently. Her interests from her childhood were pretty much continue the rest of her life. She was always interested in horses. She was famous for her ability to spot a winning horse. And she had an immense passion for dogs. Same, girl, same. Especially corgis. When her grandfather died in 1936, her uncle took over as King Edward. Now, as a kid, Elizabeth wasn't planning for a role of monarch, which is something you would normally begin training for at a young age. But she was second in line to the throne, and there wasn't much reason to suspect that she could ever be queen, because Edward was still young, and there was plenty of time for him to marry and have heirs to the throne. So, until, that is, Uncle Ed started mucking about. Edward was madly in love with a divorced American woman named Wallis Simpson. Nobody liked this. Like, literally nobody. Nobody from the royal family, nobody in the government. Like, this was all just weird. Like, you'd think the king could marry whoever he wants. Like, you're the king. Just fucking do it. But no, that's not how the British do things. So, within less than a year, Edward abdicated. He hadn't even been officially crowned. And suddenly, Albert, the Duke of York, was now King George VI. He was a quiet man. He had a horrible stutter. Did you guys ever see that movie, The King's Speech? Love it. He was not entirely prepared for this job. And suddenly, he found himself in the hot seat just as World War II was beginning. Interesting side note here. As a child, now the heir to the throne, Elizabeth, she wanted to do some normal girl things. She wanted to join the Brownies. known as the Girl Guides, like Girl Scouts. So a special group was formed of respectable girls for Buckingham Palace so that she could finally be part of something somewhat normal, only way fancier than normal brownies. Also, another side note, I was a brownie for like 45 minutes as a child. I quickly left when I realized that there wasn't any actual brownies. Like, my fat ass was terribly disappointed. Anyway, the war would definitely take its toll on her father and the family in general. Their home, where she had grown up, 145 Piccadilly, was bombed during the war, totally destroying it. Even Buckingham Palace took a hit. It was suggested that the two girls be sent to Canada, but they wouldn't leave without their mother or father. So they stayed. Elizabeth, as she came of age, joined the Auxiliary Territorial Service, kind of like a women army, where she served as a driver and a mechanic. But she never saw any real action other than training, and always went home at night to stay in the palace. At dinner, she would bore the royal family with details, deadly details, on how to fix an engine and shit like that. Like, no, literally nobody cared. At the end of the war, during a large victory celebration, Elizabeth snuck into the celebrating crowd outside the gates of Buckingham Palace, incognito, just to experience the excitement. On her 21st birthday, while vacationing with her mother, father, and sister in Africa, she gave a speech. In this speech, she proclaimed that she would dedicate her entire life to the service of the imperial family. Very seriously, she sat there and was like, I'm going to work for you, for all of you, for fucking ever. Nobody at the age of 21 is that serious and dedicated. Like, literally nobody. She had that queenly wave mastered in the womb, man. Fucking boss. Also, as the end of the war came about, her relationship with Prince Philip Mountbatten was beginning to ripen. They were actually cousins, and both great-grandchildren of Queen Victoria, which is kind of cool but also kind of weird. But they had known each other for a while. They said he was Greek, but he wasn't actually Greek. He was part of the Greek royal family, but he was like more German than Greek. Everyone was like curious, like, who the hell is this guy anyway? But damn, he was sexy as hell. Have you ever seen pictures of Philip when he was young? My goodness. Come on, you guys all watched The Crown. I know you did. Total alpha male naval hunk. Anyway, they married on November 20th, 1947, in a fairy tale wedding at Westminster Abbey. And about a year later, she gave birth to their first child, now King Charles, followed by Anne, Andrew, that guy, and finally Edward. In 1952, Elizabeth and Philip were on a tour in Kenya when she got the news that her father had died, and she was now queen. She was 25. In a country that had mostly been governed by old white dudes, some of which were alive and active during Queen Victoria's reign, this young woman is now in charge. But if anybody was going to pull it off, it was going to be this serious little nugget. Far too serious for me to be calling her nugget, actually. My apologies. Her coronation in 1953 was a big deal. It was televised all over the world in color, and like the entire country went out and bought their first TV sets. She was nearly crushed by the weight of the crown and the robes that she had to walk around in. At the start of the Queen's reign, there were 8 countries in the Commonwealth. And just so you know, the Commonwealth is a free association of countries that were once part of the British Empire. This Commonwealth was actually created by her father, King George VI, in 1949, to ensure a lasting connection between Britain and its former colonies. The monarch serves as a symbolic head of state of this Commonwealth, And during the course of the Queen's reign, that number has grown to 56, which is over 2.5 billion citizens. She always considered this one of her greatest triumphs, and she always endeavored to visit each one of these countries as often as she could, crisscrossing the world over 250 times. She worked with 15 prime ministers. Some she liked, some she didn't like so much. Everyone from Winston Churchill to the most recent Liz Truss, who only became PM a few days before the Queen died. She has met every U.S. president from Henry Truman through Joe Biden, with the exception of Lyndon Johnson. He did not visit Great Britain during his presidency. Now, of course, when you have a 70-year reign, which is the longest in British history, you're going to have ups and downs. An assassination attempt or two, press scrutiny, family drama, the fucking 90s. Oh, the 90s were rough. As she called it, annus horribilis. Did I say that right? I don't know. Anyway, she was saying it was shit. Between her kids getting divorces, her house at Windsor Castle catching on fire. Fucking rough, man. Perhaps the most famous scandal during this time period, and really probably during her whole queendom thing, was probably that of wasn't so much dealing with the world problems, but it was her son Charles and his issues with Lady Diana Spencer, who became Princess Diana, who everybody loves. Now, when they were married in 1981, it didn't take long before it was clear that the couple were not happy. Charles was clearly in love with someone else. Diana wanted to do her thing with various charities and was a bit too emotional for the Queen to handle. Diana had no problem showing her emotions to the world. The Queen would never do that. She believed that if you're going to suffer, do that shit in private. So she clearly had a hard time dealing with these outbursts and the show that Diana put on in front of everyone, selling papers. So what appeared to be a lack of sympathy on the Queen's part would lead to a decline in her overall approval from the public, especially when Diana was killed in a car accident in 1997. The public was angry that the Queen had completely misread the entire mood of the entire country. People were sad, and they wanted the Queen to express that same sadness, but that's just not how she did things. She wanted the family to stay at their home, Balmoral. She wanted to protect her grandsons, William and Harry, from any more pain. Now, she would, of course, endeavor to improve her image with the people from then on out, welcoming more chances to show her sense of humor, like an appearance in a James Bond movie. That's right, the Queen was a Bond babe. As well as her more recent endeavors to connect to the public via Zoom during the most recent COVID-19 pandemic. One of my favorite stories about the Queen is from 2003, when she gave the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Abdullah, a grand tour of her Scottish castle Balmoral. Now, in 2003, women were not allowed to drive in Saudi Arabia, but when the Crown Prince hopped in the passenger seat of the Queen's Land Rover, she got in the driver's seat with her scarf on her head, her sunglasses on, and she was all like, "Buckle up, bitch." She scared the living shit out of him as she raced through the roads and fields of this massive estate. All the while, she was just having a conversation with him while he was insisting that she keep her eyes on the road. Once again, fucking boss. Now, another sort of badass moment was in 1981 at the annual ceremony event called Trooping the Colour. It was 13th of June, 1981, and she was in a parade in London. There were crowds and crowds of people, and she was riding her beloved horse, Burmese. Well, Burmese was startled when suddenly a 17-year-old named Marcus Sargent came out of the crowd and fired 6 shots from a starting pistol at the Queen. Luckily, these were blank shots, there wasn't anything that could cause real harm. But of course, the horse was startled, and the Queen was just like, meh. She got her horse under control and just went along her merry way down the street like nothing fucking happened. totally composed, no big deal. Just damn. Oh, yeah, then there was this time that this guy, Michael Fagan, just kind of decided to pop in and visit the Queen, like in the wee early mornings of July 9th, 1982. So he actually scaled the Buckingham Palace walls, like these huge perimeter walls. They were 14 feet high, and then they were topped with barbed wire and spikes and shit. He climbed up them, and then on a drain pipe before he finally got into the Queen's bedroom, like at 7:15 in the morning. And strangely enough, a censored alarm went off, and the police were just like, it's faulty. Something's amiss. But the Queen's fine, totally fine. Nobody's actually in the palace. Come on. So Fagin just kind of made his way into the Queen's corridor, into her chamber, apparently sat on her bed for a bit, waking her up. And she's all like, yes, yep, how may I help you? So, I mean, the guy was arrested and, yeah, all kinds of stuff, but weird. Scary. I mean, I would lose my shit. And she's just like, yeah, I got this. Totally under control. No big deal. Amazing. Like I said, boss. Now, of course, as an American, the idea of monarchy or kings and queens who serve more as symbols rather than rulers or governors is kind of weird to me in general. But Queen Elizabeth seems to have done exactly what she promised the people she would do when she was 21 years old, that she would serve them in whatever capacity that she could until her dying day. And that's what she did. With composure, with dignity, with that British dry humor and wit. I think it's safe to say that she deserves a place on my list of favorite dead people. She's earned it. Not that my list is of any real importance or consequence. Anyway, thanks for listening to another episode of All My Favorite People Are Dead. Take care. God save the king and stuff. Yeah.
People are dead. All my favorite people are dead. I say it. All my favorite people are dead. All my favorite people are dead. All my favorite people are dead. All my favorite people are dead.